They were just finishing up one of their practice runs on the simulator inside of the recreations room, putting away all of the gear into the storage segments so that the recreation room could be used for other things. When Mika approached Vermi, hey, Vermi, Mika said, looking down at him a bit, as Vermi was a bit small in stature. Yes, Captain? Vermi replied, a little bit curious as to why she was talking to him. Hey, I was wondering if you'd want to hang out a bit. I was hoping to talk to you. Yeah, sure. I guess so, Captain. I'm not in trouble, am I? Because my piloting was dead on. Oh, please don't tell me this is one of those attitude adjustment things. Ugh, I hate those things. No, Vermi, this is not an attitude adjustment, and you're not in any trouble, Mika replied. Oh, thank God, because my ears just shut off on those things. Blah-de-blah-de this, blah-de-blah-de that. You're in trouble, how could you have acted such a way, blah, 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 blah. It all just goes in one ear and out the other, frankly, Vermi replied. You do realize that I'm still the captain, right? Mika replied. You're basically telling me that if I ever do reprimand you for something, you're not going to pay attention to it. Don't get me wrong, Captain. If I really screw up, and I mean really screw up, a reprimand is all a matter of perspective. It really depends on whether it's some needless tedium about behavior or attitude, or whether I actually screwed something up. Got a bunch of people killed, something like that. Yeah, you got every right to tear me a new one, and I'm gonna listen, because I got it coming. But some pointless meeting about how I didn't kiss enough ass? Yeah, I'm not paying attention to that. You can reprimand me for it all you want. Demote me, whatever. But there's not enough money in the world to pay me to hear that crap. Okay, good to know, Vermi, Mika said, shaking her head a bit. Really, I was just hoping to talk to you a bit. Nothing serious. I just wanted to ask you a few questions. Maybe grab a bite to eat or something. Well, hold up, Vermi said, looking at Mika. Are you hitting on me? Vermi said, starting to crack a smile. Don't get me wrong, Captain. If you're hitting on me, I am totally down for that. It's just a little unexpected, that's all. Especially in your current state of, well, appearance. It's not really you, but you still look pretty damn good. So yeah, I'd still be down for it. No, Vermi, Mika replied, once again beginning to shake her head. I'm not hitting on you. This is not a date. Just a conversation. Consider it a friendly conversation. Trying to be friends. That's all. Well, okay. I could always use more friends. Even though the whole boss thing makes it kind of weird. But hell, weird's my bread and butter. Let's do it. Vermi said, a cheerful grin on his face, as he packed away the last of the things from the simulation. Okay, Captain, so what do you want to talk about? Want to know my hobbies? My backstory? My favorite foods? Oh, do you want piloting lessons? Because I can teach you how to fly a ship like nobody's business, really, Vermi said as he began to walk towards the exit, Mika following along. How about you slow down a bit, Vermi? You're throwing out a bit too much. How about you just answer questions when I ask them? Oh, so we're having one of those naturalistic conversations. I can dig it, Vermi replied. Yeah, sure, Mika said, beginning to cross her arms and second guess having chosen to have a sit down with Vermi, beginning to believe that this was going to be a little bit more of a headache than it was worth. But she did want to get to know the crew a little bit better. Well, it's about lunchtime, so how about We head to the mess hall, grab something to eat, and we can talk there. And on the way, of course. Now, first up, on your resume, it showed that you have about 20 years of flight experience, which was more than any of the other candidates. And it's why you got the job, as primary ship pilot and flight commander. However, there's no information listed previous to those missions, the jobs where you were piloting ships. Don't get me wrong, your resume is impressive. You were a battle pilot in the Almeranian conflict about 15 years ago. And after the conflict ended, you pulled a myriad of jobs as pilot. And with even a scattering of piloting jobs before the conflict. But before that, it's just a blank slate. It doesn't actually show where you got training as a pilot. And so I was wondering what school you went to. Where did you get trained? Who was your instructor? Mika asked as they began making their way to the mess hall. At which point, Vermi simply burst out laughing. Teacher, he said, holding his sides as he let loose with an unorthodox sequence of chuckles and giggles, laughing so hard that he held his sides and stumbled around a bit, almost having trouble breathing. Vermi, what's so funny? Mika said, beginning to get a little bit more serious. I'm sorry, Captain, Vermi replied, beginning to catch his breath and wipe a tear away from his eye. He was laughing so hard he started to cry. His eyes were watering a bit. It's just that, I never went to any school. School? Well, hold on, Mika replied, looking down at him. All pilots are required to go to school. Learning to pilot is an advanced skill, requiring knowledge of countless different instruments, calculating ratios and thrust outputs and a million other things. You have to go to school to learn how to pilot. It takes a few months just to learn how to pilot a simple shuttlecraft. Piloting a massive ship takes much more. There's no way you could do that without going to school. Well, I'm sorry to disappoint you, Captain, but I never went to any school. I learned everything I know from first-hand experience. And lots of it. I remember the day when I stole my first shuttlecraft. My mom nearly had a heart attack. It was priceless. Don't get me wrong, I got reamed for it afterwards. But man, was it fun. I mean, I crashed it. Wrecked the whole thing. But it was fun while it lasted. And that was when I was about 8 years old. And thus my love affair with flying ships began. After that, I basically just trained myself. I started with highly detailed flight simulators from home video game consoles. And I do mean highly detailed. You'd be surprised how accurate some of those flight simulators for video games can be. There's actually a very good deal of gamers who could fare very well as pilots. But of course the simulation was never good enough for me. So after getting good with the simulators, I started taking random docked shuttle pods for joyrides. I'd bring them back afterwards. Sometimes I'd get caught, sometimes I wouldn't, but it was always fun. But my real break came when I found out that they don't actually check to see if you went to piloting school. For most piloting jobs, they simply assume that you did. After I turned a certain age, I just started accepting gigs. I had to lie about my age, of course. And as soon as they saw that I was capable of flying a ship, they just assumed that I went to school, which all worked out in my favor pretty well. I had an ample amount of pocket money, and I started putting money towards building my own custom hot rod shuttle. Oh, it was a beauty. I was almost done building it too, before that freaking conflict broke out. And suddenly, everyone who could pilot a ship was getting drafted into the war conflict, including me, even though I didn't have a license. But once again, they didn't know that. They just checked the registry for active pilots, people performing piloting jobs, and I was on it. So just like that, I was drafted into the war, and spent a great deal of time as a combat pilot on board one-man combat shuttles, which is where I got my next opportunity to step up my game. Well, you could say opportunity, or you could say a bunch of people on board the ship that my private flyer was supposed to dock with died, and all of the other pilots for the individual shuttles died. I mean, we won the fight, but basically everyone who could fly a ship was dead, except me. So I was left the only person who could pilot the primary ship, as damaged as it was, back to space headquarters, which was the first time I got to pilot a full-fledged battleship. I mean, half of the ship's systems were offline, including the lightspeed drive and a bunch of other stuff, so I had to improvise as to how it all worked, altering between different jet systems and the impulse drives, which only added an extra layer of complication to it, because the impulse drives that were functional were only partially functional, so in order to keep them from burning out, I had to alternate. But by the time we made it back to dock, I was an expert, even taking the time to get to know the systems that weren't really active. From that point on, they moved me up to primary ship pilot for Tier 1 vessels, and I spent the rest of the conflict behind the controls of actual starships rather than shuttles. And voila, that's how I learned to fly. Wow, Vermi. Just wow, Mika said, rubbing her head a bit and starting to wonder whether she should feel impressed that he self-mastered a skill that takes people 4 years or more to learn in a college education atmosphere, or whether she should be terrified that the pilot for her ship has no form of formal education in it.